Hi there, look, my name's Shelley Argent, and I consider myself an advocate for human rights and equality. I was very involved with the LGBTIQA plus and marriage, and after talking to my First Nation friends, I feel that it's really important to get involved with The Voice because I think it's a huge step forward, and I think it's well and truly time that we encouraged our First Nation people and we were more supportive. Who I have here today is Sheryl, and Sheryl is going to explain about the referendum. So would you like to tell me about it, please?
Yeah. First of all, Cheryl, my name is Sheryl. I'm a Mandali Bundalang woman from Queensland and New South Wales. The referendum is a very important piece of moving forward for our people. And I think it's really important to actually get some facts. And the facts are that back in 2015-16, the coalition at the time under the coalition Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, Ken Wyatt was taken around Australia, and I have this T-shirt in front of me which shows the discussions that went through the whole of Australia, talking about their priorities. As part of that discussion and that conversation, there was a decision to go to Uluru in 2017. And part of that, with all of these places across Australia, they were asked, who are your leaders, who are your elders, and who do you think are the important people that should be coming to Uluru so that we can decide what are our priorities. And so then in 2017, May 2017, they came together, hundreds of people across Australia, which is significant because it's never been done before. It was actually historic. So as part of that came, over several days, was the Uluru Statement of the Heart, which is a significant document. It is a one-page document that was signed by all the participants, and there were only 7 people that walked out on that, which is really significant as well, because we are made up of many nations and many needs and many areas across Australia. And so coming on a document and agreeing on a document is huge. So that document, if you haven't read it, please read it, because it is a modest request from our people, but it is a request that our people have really considered about how we can go forward on our issues and that it can be heard in Parliament. Now, why do we need to do this? Because what we've got at the moment is called closing the gap targets. And those closing the gap targets come out every year. We hear them come out. We say, oh, look, how are we going with that? The review is done, and oftentimes we are going back at least most of them, or we're staying about right, or there's only about 4 that are even in parity or in improving. But nobody seems to be accountable for it. So that system is proven to not work for us. What is proven to work for us from the elders and from our people is that where they are engaged, so with a voice, and where they're acknowledged, which is a basic human right when it comes to our constitution, we need to be in there. We were the first people here, so I really don't think that that's a real problem to most people. They do believe that that should be there. But from there is the voice. And the voice is really important, because if our people can articulate and have an avenue of articulating how their services, what their services are needed for their areas in particular, they're going to have a better chance of being engaged in it and then having success. And that is what our people are saying about our things. And the key issues around that is health, housing, education. The key areas for us, and what our people are talking about, are some of the basic human rights, just having parity with the non-Indigenous people of Australia. So that's, and really that's where it is. And so for me, it's about, this is historic. This is an opportunity for Australia to say, well, yes, we want to have you in the Constitution and acknowledged. And the second one is to have a voice that then can't be shifted from government to government. So a government can't come on and say, oh, sorry, this government put that in, so we don't agree with that, and so on political terms we're going to take it out. We need to have something that's going to stay steady for us, that we can then look at and improve, like any public policy in Australia. We may not get it right the first time, but we get it right because over time it will improve. But it's got to be, we've got to have the goal in the same place. We can't be shifting them. And so that's why this is so important to us. We must get this referendum through for my people so that we have at least a chance of being able to have parity with non-Indigenous people in Australia.
So, Sophie, tell us why the LGBTIQA plus community should be so involved or so supportive of the referendum and the Yes campaign.
Thanks, Shelley. Well, firstly, one thing you learn as, for myself as a lesbian, what it means not to be part of the mainstream, not to be part of the majority. So you learn about discrimination, you learn about hatred and bigotry, and we're seeing a lot of that at the moment for First Nations. And we saw the forces that were mounted against us as part of the marriage equality campaign. So that opens one's eyes to discrimination, to doing things better, changing society for the better in a positive way as well. So I naturally am drawn to what I can do to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, just like I was supported during that campaign. But it goes beyond that, and I think we have been seeking equality, and what I see with the voice is that we need to see equity. So added to that need to address discrimination, bigotry, hatred, we also have to resolve our history as a nation. All of us, all parts of the Australian society have to come together to resolve our history, and it is an ancient history, and we need to make that part of us, to make us whole again as a community, because at the moment we are divided by our history, and now we need to bring it together. And that's why I'm so behind the voice. I hear that it is part of a long process of the community. I hear it is the call from the community to join with them, a very generous and compassionate call to join with First Nations people. And I hear the call for voice, I hear a call for a treaty, and I hear a call for truth-telling. And all of those come together with the Uluru Statement. And for me, the referendum is that first step towards those three things.
Yeah, thank you. What I have now are some questions. Now, these are ones very common that I'm seeing on social media. So now, first of all, who will whites, or do you think, if it's true that the Yes campaign gets up, do you think whites could lose their job?
It makes no sense that people would think that white people would lose their job because of the voice.
No.
So no, people won't lose their job. It's not about white people's jobs. It's about creating a voice for Aboriginal people. So I think it will create jobs, not lose jobs.
Yeah. Do you think we could become a communist country?
No.
I know.
I don't see how. It doesn't affect what you vote. It doesn't affect a political party.
Well, the theory is that one of the activists with the Yes campaign, I don't recall his name, but he's supposed to be. They're claiming he's communist, and so that's why. Okay, now, First Nation people, will they take our land?
No, we certainly won't. It's not about taking the land. And the voice is, when we talk about what the voice is, our people are talking about the health, housing, education, human rights issues that we're behind on, and closing the gap on those. They're the issues that we're talking about, but what clearly is being put out there as being an issue, or we're going to lose our backyard. Now, these were the same things that were said around Mabo, you know, and there were no land taken from that. You know.
No. So will the First Nation people make the whites pay land tax?
There won't be a land tax, no.
It's a state matter.
It's just Aboriginal people are wanting to have a say on their lands, be acknowledged on their lands, that they were there, and where there is a potential to take over some of the land that's been already mined, where, for example, like Rio Tinto up in Gove have actually given back that land and say, well, we'll be part of recovery and building the trees and the land back, and then you can actually have businesses, and they've got a business plan, a strategy for going forward for the economic development of the people in that land, which is both black and white.
Yeah. Now, do you think we'll need added security at Parliament House?
No. No, absolutely not. I mean, all parliaments have got security that's sufficient for the day-to-day, you know, everyday thing. And Aboriginal people have been frequenting Parliament House for various events
For a long time.
for a very long time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Now, will the voice become a third chamber of Parliament?
No, it won't.
No?
No.
No,
But
let's
I
explain
think,
it.
Yeah.
The voice, if you look at the referendum question, and it's really important that people go on and have a look at that referendum question, you'll see that it describes what the voice will do. And it really clearly puts a boundary around what the voice can and can't do. And you combine that with the speeches in Parliament, which also go to describing what the voice can and can't do. And it's abundantly clear that it is advisory only. Advisory in a strong way, and I think that's great, because you want to listen to people who know their own experiences. But it is solely advisory. The decision-making for the voice, for its establishment, is in Parliament itself. There is no decision-making power in the Constitution given to the voice. So it cannot be a third chamber of Parliament. It retains the preeminence of Parliament.
Now, what do you say to the people who say First Nation people won't be better off?
Well, I say that we've got a system that's not working at the moment, which is called Closing the Gap. And if we continue to do the same, we're going to continue to get the same results. And our people have come together to Uluru to say, this is how we think the alternative is. And they're our elders, they're our leaders, and they understand what's going to work for our people. Because it is, at the end of the day, the voice is definitely about how we improve our issues and our, human rights, basically, when it comes down to what's important to us.
And then you get the reverse, where people say First Nation people will have special rights.
Special rights. No, definitely. No, there aren't any special rights, but if we're talking about trying to improve a First Nations lot in life, so our morbidity, our life expectancy, our children, our education, those things to be equal with other people, I just think, why wouldn't anybody want to have that in society? We don't want a society where we're leaving behind a certain group of people. That's not something that, it really doesn't measure Australia well if somebody's left behind. So this is really for all of us and a way to go forward and a plan for us to go forward and improve those things.
Yeah,
there's also the thing that we have been here for 65,000 years. We looked after this land. And there are things that we do know about this land. For instance, climate change. We have a lot to contribute to that if we listen to. So there are a lot of positive things that the wider Australia is starting to understand about Indigenous people that can contribute in a really big way.
Yeah, that's true. And what about the nation will become divided? What do you think about that?
Already First Nations people are feeling excluded. Already they feel the burden of their history and they have been treated in a harsh and unfair way. They were divided out. They were removed from their land. They were taken to communities. Their children were taken away. So there is a division now that we have to heal. A history that is not the same for people who are non-Indigenous. So we have to heal an already divided country and bring it together. And when you have division, you don't try to make people the same. You acknowledge the special nature of each person. So it's like any relationship. You don't heal a dispute by denying what the other person is feeling and experiencing. So we have to acknowledge what that other person is feeling for us to heal the divide.
Yeah.
So I think it brings us together because all people feel better about themselves. We won't be healed by us feeling okay and First Nations people not feeling okay.
No.
And that's where the Uluru Statement's saying, and our elders and our leaders were saying, it's about voice, treaty, truth-telling. It's all very important and in that order. And they specifically asked in that order because they thought it was steps that we can go through. And the division is particularly in the truth-telling. When people know the true history, that history didn't start in colonisation, history started 65,000 years ago, and then what had happened to many Aboriginal people across the land, then once we've come across that truth, then we can actually move forward.
So can I just ask one question here? Because what's going to happen is people are saying that this is just the beginning. Now you're saying voice, treaty, truth-telling.
Yep.
So now if it goes through that process, that doesn't, or does that mean that you will want more? Or does that mean that you will just get more acknowledgement?
No, I think they all work together and they will all come together. They are different aspects because in Queensland we're already talking about treaty. They've already done it in South Australia, they're doing it in Melbourne. So each state and territory will be doing treaty in their lands, and that'll be really going again out to the communities and saying what's really important to us and how do we get acknowledged in each of the states and territories, because this is prior to federation, okay? So the states were definitely having had a say in our lives.
Right.
So this is where treaty comes in.
Yeah.
Then the truth-telling is just a really a part of all of this. It's not asking for extra. It's actually just has to be a part of bringing us together.
So if I was going to be fear-mongering, there's nothing to fear, is there? It's
No.
It's not going to impact on anybody at all.
No.
No?
No. I mean, there's a whole heap of issues that I hear come out of the wider community, like the Australia Day. Well, Indigenous people aren't actually asking, First Nation people aren't asking for the change of date. It's not their priority. It may come up because we're a democracy, so we end up talking about some of these things that, if it doesn't suit First Nations people because it's, it's sorry business for us, then it will be a conversation, but it won't be our priority because that doesn't actually change the lives of our people. It changes our social and emotional well-being in the long run, sure, but it's not the practical needs of our people so that we can get parity.
Yeah. Okay.
So I like your concept that it depends what comes up, what will matter at the time, and obviously their priorities are education, health, housing, those sorts of really fundamental needs of the First Nations community. Having said that, once we learn the stories, and as a non-Indigenous person, when you hear the stories, you know that you have to think through yourself. How can we make this better? How can we come to terms with that history? And I urge people to read about some of these stories. And for example, the Myall Creek massacre, to read about how the Constitution was created, and actually there was purposeful denial of Aboriginal people in the Constitution.
And now, is it true that the voice is only advisory?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It is written there in the Act creating the constitutional amendment.
Right. Now, if the voice gets up, I love this one. If the voice gets up, will the next step be taking over the country? Now, this is most important.
It's taking over the country. We are 3.2% of the population, and all we're asking for is equitable, and parity. And so it's not about taking over the country. The country is where we are. I'd like to see that it actually brings us together in a really united way, so that we're bringing everybody on the table. We're such a, First Nations first, we're multicultural, we've got all sets of people in our community. We all have our different thoughts, but that doesn't mean that has to divide us. It just means that we need to understand, and that's why I want to talk and be part of this.
Yes, I mean, I thought, frankly, with that question, you'd have to be pretty amazing to want to take over the country. And the last question, now, is it true that the majority of First Nation people don't want the voice?
No, that's not correct. The 80% of First Nations people want the voice, but as any people, you will have people that don't agree with certain aspects of it. And from the arguments that I've seen on the Aboriginal people saying no to the vote is some of it's not actually, I really don't understand the logic on it. But secondly, it's not about, we can't just jump straight to sovereignty as being, where we're going to just take over, all the non-Indigenous people just move over while we sort out how the land's now rejigged or any of that. That's not what this is about. But that's where, the no vote, I think, is really putting the doubt and trying to divide people and feed into the fear of how's this going to really affect me.
That's right.
So you're saying that the no, or the people who might be thinking about saying no in the First Nations community, it comes from things like we want sovereignty acknowledged, and or we don't understand what it's about. It's not we think it's a terrible thing per se, like that there should be something done to improve the well-being and the rights of First Nations people.
Yep. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think that we actually want change. The no vote wants change. They want something different, but how we get there is probably what is in the discussion of it.
Yeah,
you mean the no vote in First Nations people want change?
Yeah, I think we know and we acknowledge we need change, because you just have to go out in community and you see the poverty and the, and the disparity. But how we get there is, some people have different views. But why I say yes to the vote is because when I'll go back to to all the discussions that happened in the coalition, and now Labor going through with the Uluru Statement of the Heart, is that we want to put that in full, because the most significant discussion that Australia's ever had of Indigenous people getting together from all over the land is this Uluru Statement. And if they're saying it's good enough for our elders and the leaders there to say, well, we agree on this statement, then that's where I think, and it comes from a lot of experience and a lot of disadvantage, and so that's a way forward, and that's the way I'm going.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I do hope that this little session has answered quite a few of your questions, removed your concerns, and I do hope that you do reconsider if you were thinking about voting no, and please do vote yes. You and I have nothing to gain or lose, but our First Nation people, they have everything to lose and an awful lot to gain if you do the right thing and vote yes. So thank you.
Thank you. Great finish. I love that.
Very good.
That was wonderful.
Oh, good.
That was good, wasn't it? Very good.